I've beat the late Jim Rutz. I beat Paris Lampropoulos. I've beat, a few other names, right? And I have a string of 40, 50 plus controls, that I've written for these top companies.
Kim Krause-Schwalm.
Copywriter freelancer há quase 3 décadas.
Já bateu controles de lendas como Jim Rutz, Paris Lampropoulos e muitos outros.
Ao todo, suas palavras já geraram mais de $1 bilhão em vendas.
To actually get this title of being like an A-lister or whatever, you actually have to be good. You actually have to sell to make money. And
You have to be dangerously good.
Exactly, yeah. How do you go about beating a control?
One of the first books I read when I first went freelance, even though I'd had all this great experience and knowledge that I gained working at Phillips Publishing, and it doesn't take that long to read it. In fact, I try to reread it every year, and I have my mentees read it. And every time I read it, I'm always getting like fresh new lessons and insights, even though it's over 100 years old. A lot of the nuts and bolts and classic strategies and everything else of direct response marketing haven't changed. I had a chance to work with some of the top legendary copywriters that they used to work with, like the late Clayton Makepeace. I got a chance to hear Gene Schwartz do a day-long lecture.
You actually met Gene Schwartz in person?
I did. I can't tell you, 99% of the time when I get something in the mail that I've ordered, there's a little shade of disappointment when you go, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like you forgot kind of what was special about this product and why you bought it. So we would literally get 8 to 10% response just with an offer in the box.
If you're not doing this in your own business, then you're probably losing money. So I think you should do that. Fala pessoal, sejam bem-vindos a mais um episódio do podcast Segredos da Escala, que é o podcast do Veturb. Caso tu não conheça o podcast Segredos da Escala, a gente traz pessoas aqui que já escalaram suas ofertas, já escalaram seus negócios, para que tu que tá em casa assistindo aqui o podcast consiga pegar 1, 2, às vezes 3 dicas, caso, na hipótese do podcast ser bom, aplicar no teu negócio e escalar ele também. Esse podcast aqui, ele foi criado pelo Veturb, que é uma empresa que eu fundei, e se tu não conhece o Veturb, nós somos uma hospedagem de vídeos 100% focada em vídeos de vendas. Então, se tu tem um vídeo de vendas, tu precisa hospedar ele no Veturb, o teu vídeo vai vender muito mais do que se estivesse hospedado em qualquer outro lugar, não só do Brasil, tá? Mas do mundo. E é por isso que hoje as maiores empresas do mundo de marketing direto usam o Veturb e confiam na nossa tecnologia, que é uma tecnologia brasileira, para aumentar a conversão dos seus vídeos de vendas. Então, se tu ainda não é cliente do Veturb e gostaria de testar, tem esse QR Code aí na tela que tu vai ter 14 dias de graça para testar o Veturb, sem falar também em 15% de desconto durante 2 meses, assim que tu se tornar cliente. Ou então é só clicar no primeiro link aí da descrição aqui desse podcast, que também vai estar lá essa promoção, beleza? Mas agora, sem mais delongas, bora pro nosso episódio. Kim, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation here to the Veturb podcast. And so the first question that I have for you is for the few people that don't know you here in the Veturb audience, could you please tell us who you are and what you're doing right now? So then we can start the podcast from there.
Sure. So my name's Kim Krause-Schwalm, and I've been a freelance copywriter for about 27 years. Wow. And before that, I worked as a marketer for one of the largest direct response publishers at the time, Phillips Publishing, which is, no longer around. And while I was there, I had a chance to work with some of the top legendary copywriters that they used to work with, like the late Clayton Makepeace. I got a chance to hear Gene Schwartz do a day-long lecture. It was an amazing experience to work there at the time. And then I also had the opportunity after Phillips launched the first alternative health newsletter, which basically created the supplement industry as we kind of know it. I launched and ran a supplement business and grew it to the equivalent of $40 million in revenue within the first 3 years. And so we can maybe talk a little bit more about some of those lessons from that. But from there, after a few years, I decided to become a freelance copywriter. I saw the kind of lifestyle and earning potential that the top copywriters enjoyed, but I had to kind of start, kind of from the bottom and work my way up the copywriting ladder. And I was able to do so and had some big successes along the way. And now for the last 5-6 years, I still do some copywriting and work with clients, but I also have a variety of courses and mentoring programs. And I also share my knowledge on podcast and with people on my email list. And that's what I'm here to do today. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Jean.
Thank you. So just so I can see that I got it right. So you actually met Gene Schwartz in person?
I did.
Oh my
It's,
God.
I
That's
mean,
so cool.
yes, it's kind of a funny story. I think I was still fairly new there at Phillips Publishing. And it's like, oh yeah, we're bringing this guy in, Gene Schwartz, and you had to be at least like in management. I was like a low level manager, so I got to go to this day long thing, and it was on a Friday, and it was fascinating. Like I still remember, and I have the transcript. You can actually get the transcript,
Whoa, whoa.
of his lecture that day, and it's packed with gold. So yeah, and he was just sitting on a stool in this conference room and sipping his water. And it went on all day and it was fascinating. But towards the very end, I was getting a little restless because I was supposed to meet some friends for happy hour up in Baltimore. And I'm kind of looking at my watch and I was sitting next to one of the senior VPs. I'm like, I have to get going. And he's like, and he looked at me, he's like, if I were you, I would stay. And sure enough, and it's just so funny. It cracks me up to think that I was literally going to cut out of there early,
Yeah.
because I didn't really know the significance of
Yeah,
what
yeah.
was happening. I mean, I did obviously, and then I was like, yeah, I think I better stick around. And it was an amazing thing to just be able to say I was in the room.
That's
But I mean,
amazing. Yeah, it's
yeah, but
incredible.
and I learned so many I mean, there was every day was like learning lessons working there. I mean, you had the experience of working with an Agora company. I mean, to work at a company like that in its heyday, I mean, just walking down the hallway to go to the coffee break room, like, you'd see, what the direct response magalogs, right? Because that's what everybody was doing then. And one's written by Gary Bencivenga and all their different controls just
Whoa,
hanging up on a bulletin board. And you just were constantly immersed in that world.
that's
So it was an
amazing.
amazing place to learn.
Yeah, then I wish I could be there. Maybe I would even give you a kidney to have this experience of talking to Jimmy
Ah,
Schwartz in person. Yeah, he's one of my heroes.
yeah, he
So yeah,
was just a very kind and gentle person as well. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Not
amazing.
a big ego.
I even bought his book from Brian Kurtz,
Yeah.
which is Breakthrough Advertising. And guys, if you're
Oh,
in the audience, if you want to get this book, you need to talk to Brian Kurtz because I think
you
that he
have
bought
to
the
talk.
rights or something, and then
He
you can
did.
buy, yeah, from
So
him.
can I show? I have a little show and tell real quick since we're on that topic.
Of course, do it.
So when I first became a copywriter, I had a very good paying job at Phillips Publishing, but I decided I was going to take the leap. And somebody hired me, for about 6 months, retainer. So it was like, okay, it's a good little bridge, right? And the guy was actually a former Agora person who ran that supplement business. And he said, you've got to get your hands on Breakthrough Advertising, right? It's like a great book, but no one carried it. Like the only place I could find it was Amazon. It was like 900 and something dollars.
Yeah.
So my client lent me his copy and I copied all of it, right? And,
Whoa.
like this is still my go-to, like, and Brian Kurtz knows I did this, so I'm not going to get arrested. But yeah, it's just like that's what I mean, you can see that was like my Bible for so many years going. And now, of course, I do have the actual book, right? I have probably at least a couple copies, but
Yeah.
it is one of those great books. And I think I mentioned this a lot on podcasts, but like one of the first books I read when I first went freelance, even though I'd had all this great experience and knowledge that I gained working at Phillips Publishing, was Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take that long to read it. In fact, I try to reread it every year and I have my mentees read it. And every time I read it, I'm always getting like fresh new lessons and insights, even though it's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the nuts and bolts and classic strategies and everything else of direct response marketing haven't changed. It's just
Yeah,
different
of course, yeah.
forms. And yeah.
Psychology doesn't change. So if you learn it once, maybe you need to work on your format, how to deliver the message, but the ideas behind of it usually be the same because that's what moves people, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. The psychology doesn't change. The strategies really don't change.
Yeah,
It's just different methods and even some of the tactics. It's just, again, like different channels or different methods that you would use to implement.
exactly. Yeah. So Kim, before we talk about all your copywriting experience, how to beat controls and all that kind of stuff, you said that you had an experience running your own supplement business, right? And you had a lot of success with it, right? You said that you scaled to 40 million per year.
Yes.
And
So, yeah, just to clarify, it wasn't my own business.
yeah.
It was when I was still an employee.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if I was my own business, I'd probably be extremely wealthy. I mean, but no, I was well compensated, but it wasn't like, but I also didn't have to take the risk of starting my own business either,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course, yeah.
So yeah, but it was an amazing experience. I'd only been at Phillips Publishing for about 6 months, and I'd already, shown that I understood copy, and I was a marketing manager. I was like running different offers as a back end to their Health and Healing subscriber list, which the list had exploded to like over 300,000 paid subscribers.
Whoa.
So, but what they all seemed to want was Dr. Julian Whitaker, who was the editor of the newsletter. They wanted his recommended supplements. They wanted an easy way to buy them, right? And they wanted
Yeah.
his formulation. So they asked me, would you like to launch a supplement business? And everybody, like so many other people who were more senior than me, were not interested in doing it because I think they just felt like that's really crazy. And we're a publishing company. And I decided I'm going to just go ahead and do it, right? I saw the opportunity. And yeah, so just within like 3 months or so, we had everything, like at least some initial products created and off, and I developed the copy, and we just started selling it just on the back end to the people who subscribed to his newsletter.
Yeah.
And it just grew and grew and grew. And, coming from a publishing company, the idea was, well, it's almost like a subscription-based approach to marketing, and it's a consumable product, just like a newsletter is something you have to renew every year. How are you going to get that second order? How are you going to get that third order? Thinking more long-term beyond just, we got to sell people up front, but then what do we do after that? Right.
Yeah.
So that is why, even though it was only like the first 3 years that I was running it, just going to one list, it grew from 0 to 23 million in sales, which in today's dollars is over 40 million.
Yeah.
And it was by far the most profitable business in the company,
Yeah.
because
that's
it was
interesting.
so much going to people who had already bought before. And again, we didn't have a lot of acquisition costs because it's already going to a list where people knew the doctor.
Yeah. And what kind of strategies or tactics did you use to actually achieve these like repeat sales that you just talked about, where people
Yeah.
buy once and
Well,
then they buy another
well,
and another time?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think part of it is taking advantage of Dr. Julian Whitaker's strong endorsement power and the relationship they already had, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, even just from that initial sales piece that would go out with their newsletter, we tried to capture his voice, and what would he say and how would he sing, like different words and, all the kind of stuff they teach you, like in capturing a voice of, somebody that you're writing copy for. And we continued that kind of thing. So once somebody bought, we would actually take advantage of that real estate that's in the box where the supplement would be shipped, right? Again, it's amazing how many people don't take advantage of what we used to call bounce backs, right? So we'd have an offer right in the box. This is pre-email marketing. I kid
That's
you not.
really
This is
interesting.
early 90s. Now, again, you can do this obviously with funnels and emails and everything, but there's still like, I can't tell you 99% of the time when I get something in the mail that I've ordered, there's a little shade of disappointment when you go, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like you forgot kind of what was special about this product and why you bought it. So we would literally get 8 to 10% response just with an offer in the box because of
Whoa.
how we did it, right?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have maybe, I forget, like a gift certificate in there and like a mini catalog, and there'd be a letter, again, continuing that relationship. Hey, you've kind of reinforcing the purchase decision. Congratulations for getting Dr. Whitaker's, blah, blah, blah. Get them pre-experiencing the benefits. Here's how you want to get started right away because you want to stimulate usage, right? And then, here you can use this for your next order or check out some of his other recommended formulas in the catalog we've, included, right? And then you just basically set the stage for reorders right there.
Yeah.
The other thing we started doing was introducing an auto ship. And again, I know a lot of people do those things maybe upfront as part of the acquisition offer, but it can also confuse and keep people from actually buying from you initially. But then we would really push that hard with separate, promotional efforts. Once they bought, we'd like convert them into getting on the auto ship, right?
Yeah.
So there were a number of things like that. And then we would have special sales events. And again, we were doing a lot of this with direct mail,
Yeah.
But so it was like it all had to work, and it didn't have to be long copy because it's back end, but there was a lot of like no-brainer stuff. That was like, well, let's have, some people didn't want to do the auto ship because they're older, maybe didn't trust like the credit cards. Maybe people are more conducive to that these days. But we would have a stock up sale we came up with this idea once and we ran with it. And we had, if you buy 3 or 6 bottles, you save X amount. It just became something we started doing every 6 months because it just brought a bunch of money in, and it was another way of stimulating reorders.
Yeah.
And now the company, they still literally have, there's a woman in my neighborhood, that's all she does now. They still do the stock up mailings. Isn't that hilarious? It's like I created that job. But
Yeah. She should
yeah,
thank you.
so right. But I'm just saying these are all things you can apply to almost any business on the back end. But we were very back end focused. Now, obviously, as the company grew, they started doing, acquisition marketing, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's because of its roots. And this has been one of those things because over the last 20 plus years that I've mainly been that unicorn that can write successful acquisition promos, right? Because there's not a lot of people who are good at that.
Yeah.
All my clients are just, so many of them are just focused on, we need a new, control, or we need to do this, right?
Yeah.
And if I even say, well, what are you doing in your back end? Or why aren't you doing this? It's kind of like, oh, we don't, go over here, like stay in your lane.
Yeah.
It's like there's all this money being left on the table with so many supplement businesses. So if you're a copywriter working in a company like this, or you have a client, or maybe you just want to get your foot in the door, and you're not going to necessarily do that by writing the killer VSL on your first try, right? Because nobody does that. Not me, nobody. But like having a smaller project, you can get your foot in the door or create more work for yourself. If you already have a relationship, maybe you're doing the email marketing, but you're like, we could do XYZ promotion, or we could do this, and we could get more people we could go after lapsed buyers, right? People who haven't bought in 6 months. Hey, let's reactivate those people. I mean, there's so many back-end opportunities. If you've ever read Jay Abraham, he actually consulted with us. He was a good friend of the president of the company.
Yeah.
We had meetings with the great Jay Abraham where he'd be like, do this, do these things, do that. And, he's a big proponent of find that hidden back-end gold in your business.
Yeah. Do you have any... Actually, I have 2 questions, right? So the first one is that you said that you use the real estate in the box that you send people your supplements. And then you said that you can use this for lots of things. So one of them is to make another offer. And then you say that you get around 8% response on this offer.
Yes.
And then you also say that you could also encourage product consumption. So
yes,
they will use it. So they are more likely to reorder if they're actually using it, right?
Exactly. Because they're not going to reorder if it's sitting there on the shelf, right?
Yeah,
unopened. Right.
Of course, yeah. So what do you think is the ideal way to use this, or does it depend? Like, should people go to encourage of consumption, or should they just do another offer? Or how can people decide on this back-end funnel so they can maximize profits in their business?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a lot more tools at our disposal, so to speak, right? It's a lot easier and more cost effective to do it these days because of email and other ways of reaching people. I mean, we just basically had that one box going out and then whatever the next mailing was that we sent, you know? So we had to make the box count. We did a lot in the box. Maybe you don't need to do all these things, but we would have the, reinforcement of the purchase decision. Like, here's what you're going to, get ready to experience all these great things. And that would also, stimulate usage. We'd also say, here's how you get started, make it super easy for them, right? Address any possible questions, and then give them a coupon or something to say, use this for your next order. It's a thank you or whatever you want to position it, right?
Got it.
But you could break those things out in a welcome sequence, right? That they get.
Yeah. The thing about the box that I really like is that it's very new for people to actually receive something that has like some sort of CTA in a box. I know that in the past, it used to be the complete opposite. So people would receive lots of things in the mail. But right now, at least here in Brazil, I never received a box like this. So if something arrived in my home, and then I would probably look at it. I would probably read it because, as Gary Bencivenga says, it looks like value. So I at least see what it is about. But the email thing, I get so much spam in my inbox today that most of the times I don't even open it. So that's why I like this box strategy? Because I think
The boxes,
crazy enough
yeah,
is something new.
anything physical. Quite honestly, you could mail something. You could
Yeah.
send a postcard, and I have seen some companies do this, right? It could be the thing, maybe that, a simple 6x9 postcard. I mean, we all know what those look like,
Yeah.
but it could, and you have your consistent branding carried forward so they know immediately that, hey, this is from XYZ company that I just ordered from. And maybe there's a big picture of what they just ordered. It's like, hey, welcome, thank you again. Use this coupon to get, $20 off your next order or whatever the deal, right? So
Yeah.
you can do it that way, and that's going to really pop. But yeah, like I just got, like, I didn't save the box. It was just a plain box. Now, to their credit, they actually had their brand name like on the tape. So at least it stood out. I knew instantly it was from the company that I ordered it.
Yeah.
And then it just has like basically the skincare product. This is some eye cream.
Yeah.
And then they have like a little postcard here where it's doing some stuff. And we can use QR codes too, which makes it a lot easier, right?
Yeah,
The QR
yeah.
code can send you straight to a catalog or to a special page that you've put aside, like where they can claim their welcome offer.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's where you have like the information, so you don't have to worry, about it might get lost in an email or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, the box, people just aren't taking advantage of that, and they're not also thinking about how do you want your customer to feel? What do you want their experience to be, right? Do you want them to be like, oh, it just doesn't seem special? Do you know what I'm saying? Especially if you're
Yeah.
selling like at a premium price.
Yeah.
So I think that that's an overlooked opportunity for sure, is the box, that whole experience, how
Yeah.
you send them places, to buy more or learn more from, about your other products.
Yeah. Opa, desculpa interromper o teu episódio aqui rapidinho. Eu só queria te pedir, tá? Se tu quiser me ajudar aqui no podcast, que é pra tu pegar e se inscrever aqui no canal. Isso é 100% de graça, tá? Obviamente não paga nada pra fazer isso. Eu tô te pedindo isso porque eu vi que 57,8% de vocês aí que estão em casa assistem o podcast, mas infelizmente não se inscrevem no canal. E aí, cara, se tu não se inscreve, o canal não cresce, o YouTube não entrega isso aqui pra mais pessoas, e a gente não consegue atrair mais convidados aqui pro podcast pra criar um conteúdo legal pra ti. Então, cara, se tu quer me ajudar, por favor, clica aqui embaixo, tá? Em se inscrever, e vamos tentar diminuir esse valor aí, vamos tentar chegar nos 50%, colocar essa meta pra gente poder crescer o canal aqui do VTurb e aí trazer mais conteúdo pra ti, pra que tu possa ganhar ainda mais dinheiro, beleza? Então, de volta pro episódio. And the second question that I have, Kim, is that you said that Jay Abraham used to help you guys at Phillips Publishing.
Yeah.
Do you have more resources where people can actually study more about the backend so they can build their own backend? Because I know that Jay talks a lot about this, but to be honest, I think that I only read one book about him, which is Getting Everything You Can from All
Yeah.
You Got, or something like
It's a
this. I
great
don't
book.
remember
It's
the
a
name.
great book. Yeah, I have it on my shelf, Getting Everything Out of What You've Got.
I think it's that one exactly.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't know a lot about backend, and I would like to know more. So, do you recommend some resources for our audience that is watching this?
I mean, I know that Robert Skrob, Skrob, has established himself as an expert more on like with newsletters and subscriptions,
Yeah.
in terms of retention marketing. So I believe he's written a book, but it's not going to be something specific to supplements per se.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is sort of this one area. Maybe I need to write a book because I feel like, again, like, a lot of people aren't doing it as well as they could be. And this is where, I mean, if you're worried about scaling your offer, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, I got to make all my money up front with my funnel.
Yeah.
Well, if you now have enough experience with, now we've built out the back end, and now we know if we just get that person, what the lifetime value is actually going to be X amount, then maybe you're bringing people on at a loss and you can scale much higher because you're making your money up, on that
Yeah.
back end.
Yeah.
And so it's actually could be a much more successful way to scale your business and not
Yeah.
have to get
Right
everything
now-
up front.
Right now on VTurb, we have some of the biggest advertisers in the whole world.
Mhm.
And some of them, they are on the first page of ClickBank selling supplements there. And then these guys, some of them, not all of them, but some of them are offering 100% commission on the sale. If you sell a supplement, they will give you everything,
Right.
all the money that the supplement sells for. And they do that because they have this very developed backend. So they actually can get money out of the client again.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it, and to be honest, I think it's a little bit of their secret, so they don't share it. They probably just test it a lot. But I know
Right.
that this is happening. So there are some people today that are doing this, and they are my biggest clients. So if
Yeah.
they are my biggest clients, it means that they're huge because lots of people use Viterb. And then
Right.
if you're not doing this in your own business, then you're probably losing money. So I think you should do that. At least go to the first page of ClickBank, then buy their products and see what they are sending
Mhm.
you, because then you can at least get an idea of what kind of backend promotions they are running, how to structure your backend, so you can make
That's a
more
very
money.
good suggestion. Yeah. If they're offering that kind of upfront commission, then they're probably making money on the back end. And so, yeah,
Yeah, no,
buy
of
that
course, of
product. And
course.
that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's even going back to the Claude Hopkins book I mentioned earlier, where you just talk about like, you know, the relationship. And part of that is if you have a product spokesperson or personality like Gundry, or
yeah,
whatever, like you've got to really use that to
yeah,
your advantage. And you don't just do it like with a video on the, acquisition part, but like carry that all through the whole relationship is with that doctor or with that expert.
yeah.
Um,
Makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, and then you tie people more to you than just some kind of generic, "Oh, we," like, "Who's we?" Or, you don't know who's talking or it just doesn't feel like there's a real person behind the business.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Kim, I would like to talk to you about copywriting right now. I know that you are an A-list. It's called A-lister copywriter, right? Or A-list
I
copywriter.
didn't come up with it. I mean, it's, I think, I don't even know if it's gotten to be a little bit of a dated term, but everybody still uses it. But yeah, I think it kind of refers to the people who kind of have come up and, worked with some of the more, hard to get into companies and the
Yeah,
ones where they're hiring like nothing but top copywriters. So if you are like, I've gone up against some of the best names in the business, and either I've lost or I've won. I mean, I've beat the late Jim Rutz, I beat Paris
oh,
Lapropoulos, I've beat, a few other names, right? But
that's really
um,
cool.
but it's like head-to-head tests, right? So there, the high, it's very competitive to
Yeah,
the way that they market to be able to get a control. So I think it's kind of like David Deutsch is an A-list copywriter. The people I just named. There's a lot of them. Carlene
yeah,
Anglais Cole.
yeah.
Um,
I
they
actually
and
recorded
also,
with Dave here, I think maybe 2 weeks ago. He was in this podcast right here. We talk
oh,
about his copy
nice.
process. Yeah, it was
Yeah, he's
amazing. Yeah,
great.
yeah,
He's a great guy. So yeah, so it's I think the people who also start to develop that track record and consistency. I mean, I have a string of 40, 50 plus controls, that I've
oh,
written for
that's
these top
amazing.
companies. And yeah, but I mean, I've been at it for a while. And yeah, but I think there's a lot of new A-listers and I mean, I feel like it's the whole industry is getting so big and fragmented that
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that you and I have probably never heard of who are
yeah, of
quietly
course.
working over here for a company or maybe with multiple clients and they're getting amazing results. So there's a lot of hidden gems out there as well
Yeah.
that we're hearing about.
But to actually to actually get this title of being like an A-lister or whatever, you actually have to be good. You actually have to sell to make money.
You
And
have to be dangerously good. That's why
think
I came up with
exactly, yeah, exactly. And if
it.
you don't know what this means, guys, it's like her brand, her headline. I don't know. It will
Yeah,
appear.
dangerously good. Yes.
Yeah, it will appear a website right now on the screen, and it will also be on the first link of the description if you want to check out Kim's work. Like, we'll talk about that later too.
Right.
But when you start a copy project, and let's say that someone hires you to beat a control, right? So that's your job, to beat
Hmm.
the control. Do you have like a process to do that? Like things to change, things not to change? How do you go about beating a control?
Okay. Well, I mean, generally, if I'm hired to beat the control, I'm coming up with all new copy, right? I mean, this is different from just saying, hey, can you come up with a new angle to test or this or that? Like, I'm doing completely new copy. So the whole thing is going to change.
Yeah,
And what I'll do is I'll look at what is the current control and maybe what different variations of that have they tested and maybe what was the previous control. And I will dissect that control, whatever it is that I'm going up against. And it's funny, I just wrote about this in an email to my list today. And I'm not sure if very many people listening, if they listen or watch American football, but
I don't know. Yeah,
there's very close to where I live in Washington, D.C. Their football team did very well this year. And it's in part because they have a quarterback, even though it's his first year and he's a rookie, he's broken all these records. And what he does, and I just wrote about this in my email, is he goes in like 4 or 5 hours before practice every day, and he's looking at whoever they're going to go up against the following Sunday. He's going through all their game tapes. He's dissecting, studying, analyzing. What are their strengths? How can I maybe disarm those strengths? What are their weaknesses? How can I take advantage of their weaknesses, right? And he's putting all this strategy into his head so when he gets out on the field and it's game time, you know,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of the same thing. So I've always done this. And right from the beginning, no one really taught me how to write long form copy. I just kind of had to absorb it and figure it out. There were no courses back then. I didn't have a mentor like stepping me through it. And so I would collect as many successful controls as I could, and I would just study and analyze them and do the same thing. So if, I'm like, hey, Kim, you're going to go up against this control package, right? I'm digging into that. That's my first step. Like, okay, what are they doing? Why is this a control? Why is this successful? What are they doing right? Where are some things that I think they could have done something better, or maybe a weakness, right? That I can exploit, that I can take advantage of, just like this quarterback, right? That I was telling you about.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that is like step one, like really analyze what you're going up against and understand it. Step two is if it's not already an audience that I'm familiar with, and again, I've written a lot to a similar audience over the years, especially like in the supplement space, but I will get really specific because even within supplements, there's so many sub niches, right? Like, for example, several years ago, and I still have the control for this, probably 7 years later, I was asked to write a long form sales page for a sinus supplement. And that's a niche I had never written for, nor was it something that I personally suffered from, or nobody in my family had sinus issues. So I had to really dig in and understand, who is this avatar? Who is this person? What are they dealing with? What are their words, language? How do they suffer? Because I wrote this like back in 2016, and I didn't use AI, but for more recent projects, like last year I wrote something for people dealing with constipation. Well, again, that was something I hadn't really written about.
Yeah.
And didn't have personal experience, thankfully. TMI. But anyway, so but I really dug into, who is this person? And for that, there's a lot of, obviously you can use AI, but just as an aside, I did my usual process where I got a snapshot picture of what their greatest fears, frustrations, desires, hopes, everything like related to that problem and the desired solution was. But then I did it like the way I normally would, looking at forums and surveys and everything else. And then I also did it with AI. And I kind of recommend doing it both ways, to be honest, because AI gave me like a very thorough list, right? Like maybe things I would not have thought of or captured, but it's in this it tends to be much more of a dry kind of clinical kind of language, whereas actually having the emotional words and copy, like think Clayton Makepeace, how every word of his copy like packed emotional power, right?
Yeah.
So just having all that at so anyway, so that's like definitely worth spending some time on too, right? Especially if it's not a sub niche that you've written for.
Yeah.
And then I dissect the product. Okay. Again, if we're focusing on a supplement, what's in it? And I'll interview, if I can, like the formulator who created the product, are there some branded, patented ingredients? Well, let me talk to them or see what their proprietary studies are. Let me look at, the other research and studies, let me find the biggest possible claim I can make with the best proof to back it up, right? Maybe I've got two great studies that show something. Well, one of them, like I can say it came out of Harvard. Well, I'm going to choose that one, obviously, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, kind of going through like what are the cool research and backup and support, right? And then which one kind of has the best story? Maybe there's a newness effect, or it's not as known, or it's more intriguing. And then I kind of start to just assemble, as Gene Schwartz would say, like copy is assembled. I start to kind of envision, okay, so I'm going to actually start off talking about this ingredient first, and then maybe this is the next one that's really interesting, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So those are the things I do. Those are all the steps, and figuring out kind of, well, the way things are these days, maybe everybody has ashwagandha, right?
Yeah.
What's so special about this ashwagandha? Or so then you got to go deeper and say, well, is there something about how the formula works together as a whole, or is it something unique about this ingredient, or there's some delivery system, or what other kind of unique mechanism that now allows me to say a similar claim, but now it's stronger? Again, going back to Gene Schwartz and looking at the stages of market sophistication. Where is this product? Well, most supplement products are third or fourth stage right now, probably more fourth. So
Yeah.
now you need a better mechanism, stronger, faster, more efficient, surer way of doing something. But then you have to have the proof to back that up, right?
Yeah.
Or what's the story there? So those are all the things you have to do before you just even start sitting down to write the copy. Now, the good news is once you kind of gone through this, you've got a lot of copy already figured out that you can work with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you start to assemble the copy.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ken, that's really interesting that you said, okay, I need to write a new copy. So you start to study the supplement, right? And then if you find some ingredient in it that's good, that has lots of proof, you can usually create a mechanism out of this ingredient, right?
Well, you got to dig it out. You got to find it. And there's different ways of doing it. But yeah.
Yeah, so my question is that, for example, if you have a supplement, okay, and the strongest ingredient is like something that is already being used in the current control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you use the same ingredients, if you use another one, you will lose proof. If you use the same one, your copy, maybe it will look like the old one, right? Or how do you
Okay.
do this? How do you make the copy look new, even though you're using the same mechanism?
Okay. I'll give you a perfect example. And yeah, we didn't get to the point too where, before you're writing copy, you are brainstorming like what angles am I going to use, like based on this other research I just explained, right? So several years ago, I wrote a VSL for one of the Agora supplement companies, and it was for an anti-aging supplement. And they were leading with, now I forget which ingredient, but it was an anti-aging type of ingredient. And that was the lead, and they had their whole big idea and angle and headline were kind of based on this ingredient. And it was, so I was going through and I was like, well, there's like 5 or 6 other things in here, right? And one of them I thought, well, no one's really written about that. That sounds kind of interesting. Let's say it was something carefree mango. I think that might have been. It was some unique ingredient
Okay.
from India, I believe. And so I focused on what is the best proof, study, claim that I can find about that. And I actually was able to go further and look at the mechanism of action of how that ingredient worked to, do what it did. And by the news at the time, Mark Kelly, who was an astronaut, and he had a twin brother, they both had gone up to space. And actually, no, Mark had gone up to space and his brother had stayed here. And usually what happens is the astronauts tend to age a lot faster or something. Make a long story, he came back and he still looked really young. And I was able to tie this mechanism. And I can't remember now exactly how I did it, but I had to back it all up, right, to get it through Agora. And it was basically, I found a mechanism that was similar to the mechanism of this one ingredient. So I was like, that's a great story. So I led with the twin astronauts lead and it beat the control. But I was able to go like even a step removed to kind of tie that to a big idea. And so I did that by coming up with a whole new story, focusing on one of the other like kind of unsung hero ingredients that actually had a really cool story behind it. So that's one way you can do it. But you can also do it by, leading with the same ingredient as well. I mean, I've done that multiple times with I wrote for a detox, supplement many years. I had the control several times. And you can come up with different angles, like for the detox, even though it was always the same ingredient, it was like everything from, like it was more like focusing on the problem it was solving. So did you know this toxin's like destroying your brain could be one, or like, I think I actually used one, the new government regulation that, could be destroying your health. And that's because it was allowing light bulbs you were required to use that had mercury in them. Right.
Oh.
And so, and then tying that to what this detox product does, like helping to, get that out of your body. Exactly. So So it doesn't have to necessarily be a different ingredient, but you can go with a different ingredient, or you just go with a whole different angle or story of the same ingredient.
Yeah, yeah, that makes completely sense. And of course, that we it's almost impossible, right, to express to convey all your years of experience in this very short podcast. So if people want to know more of these control beating secrets, they can go where, Kim? Do you have a website or something?
Yes, I do. So it's getdangerouslygood.com, or you can
Okay.
also get there by putting my name, kimschwalm.com, KIMSCHWALM. And then you can get on my email list either there, and you can get a free checklist that I've put together. It's actually 5 checklists in one, that everything from research to final editing of your promo. And you get that when you sign up to be a Copy Insider, which is free. And that means you just get on my email list, you get to hear from me. And I would love to have you as one of my Copy Insiders.
Awesome. So guys, it will appear here on the screen, the links that Kim just said. Get Dangerously Good. It will appear here on the screen. Also, the website, that is her name, Kim Schwab. I don't know how to pronounce it, but
It's
anyway,
kimschwalm.com, or you
Kim
can go to
Schwalm.
copyinsiders.com. If that'll just take you straight to getting my free checklist.
Yeah, it will also be on the description here. So if you want to just click there, it's okay. And Kim, thank you so much for being here. I would like to ask you to send a last message to the Vitor audience. You can talk about anything that you want. You can talk about yourself, how to get good at copy. You can talk about God. You can talk about anything that you want. Just the last minute of for you to, express yourself and just send us a message.
I would say be passionate and love what you do. I mean, I have been very, very fortunate to do work that I absolutely love in a field where I feel like I'm making people better off, and just find the joy in what you do. And and if you're not enjoying it, maybe do some other things, right?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to take risk. I mean, I just published my first children's book. I've got this children's book that I just published. That's a sample copy, but you're developing amazing skills as a copywriter or marketer, and you can really apply them to anything that brings you joy. So go out and do it.
That's awesome. So thank you, Kim. And guys, see you in the next Vitor episode. Bye. Cara, muito obrigado aí por ter assistido aqui mais um episódio de Segredos da Escala. Se tu gostou do episódio, não se esquece, tá, de curtir aqui esse episódio, de se inscrever no canal do VTurb pra tu receber aí mais episódios aí na tua caixa de entrada. Isso é muito importante pra gente, e se tu fizer isso, eu te garanto, tá, que eu vou trazer os melhores convidados aqui pra passar conteúdo pra ti, beleza? E se tu tá procurando aí mais episódios aí pra assistir, cara, eu vou deixar 2 episódios aqui, tá, em algum lugar aqui da tela aqui, dos Segredos da Escala pra tu ver. Então clica ali, vê eles, tá, assiste também, vale a pena. Grande abraço e até mais.